Holy Gospel according to John. Glory to you, O Lord. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, and yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. One semester when I was in seminary, I rode to classes with Jeff Nichols, a member of our congregation. One afternoon on the way home, we were talking about the Apostles' Creed and the phrase in it about the resurrection of the dead. That's what seminarians talk about on the way home. We talked about Jesus' resurrection, and Jeff said something that seemed profound. He said that for him, the most amazing holiday is not Easter, but Christmas. Because if God had the power to create the universe and everything in it, there would be no doubt that God could resurrect someone from the dead. But he said that the astonishing thing is that at Christmas, God would choose to send Jesus here in the first place, knowing where Jesus would end up. God chose to send Jesus here because God has a problem, has always had it, always will. It's a bad problem, one that even God, with all God's power, can't do anything about. God's problem? God is love. And what happens to those who love? They suffer. As C.S. Lewis said, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. The ancient Greeks said there were 5 different kinds of love. We say there's one, romantic love. But C.S. Lewis said that at bottom, there are basically 2 kinds of love: need love and gift love. He said need love comes from emptiness. It's always circular, going out from the subject to the object that has something of value, and then back to the needy person. It's always circular, from the need back to the need. But he said that gift love is the polar opposite. It is not born of emptiness, but of fullness, of abundance. And its goal is to enrich and to enhance, and so its course is always an arc, from the giving person to the needy person. And Lewis said that the uniqueness of the Christian religion is that God's love is gift love. But therein is God's problem. God so loved the world that he gave. He gave Jesus in a manger in Bethlehem, knowing the way he would be treated, knowing how he would suffer. In a play in 1946 by a German Lutheran minister, Gunther Rutenborn, who had lived through the 30s and 40s and the atrocities of World War II, he had seen his nation bring the entire world into war and seen it collapse. The play was about the question of who was to blame for the terrible suffering which the Jews, the Germans, and the whole world had experienced. And the play began with refugees milling about on a stage, arguing about who was to blame. Some said it was Hitler and his insane vision of a superior race. Others said it was the Jews and the stranglehold they had on the economy of Egypt. Others said it was the munitions manufacturers who profited handsomely from the war. And others said it was the apathy of common people who created a moral vacuum. And then a figure strode from the wings of the stage onto its center and said to all of the people, "You're being superficial. You aren't getting to the root of the problem. I'll tell you who's to blame. God is to blame. Isn't God the one who created the world as it is? The one who gave people like Hitler the power to do what Hitler did?" The refugees love that idea. We all love to blame someone else. And so there on the stage, they decided to have a trial, to put God in the dock for the crime of creation. They brought God down and put him on trial. They brought out all the evidence of the suffering his creation had to undergo, and it took little time to find God guilty. In the play, the judge, with great finality, said that because of the enormity of the crime, there must be a tremendous penalty. He said, "I hereby sentence God to the worst thing there is, to come into this wretched world and live in it as a human being in this world that God created." The judge asked the three traditional archangels, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel, to carry out the sentence. As the angel Raphael thought about the sentence, he said to himself, "I'm going to make sure that when God carries out his sentence, that he knows insecurity and obscurity. I'll have him born on the backside of nowhere, with a peasant girl for his mother. I'll have him live in an occupied country and learn what that feels like. I'll make him a Jew in a Jew-hating world, in circumstances where there would always be questions about his birth, whether or not he was illegitimate." And with that, he walked off the stage. The Archangel Michael appeared next, and as he thought about the sentence, he said, "I'm going to make sure that God knows what it's like to experience failure and rejection. He'll want to accomplish so many things that he won't be able to accomplish. Not even his family will understand him, and in the end, everyone in his life will reject him. And he will end with a feeling that everything he wanted to do had come to tragic failure." And he walked off the stage. Gabriel, the last, said, "I'm going to see to it that God knows what it's like to suffer in his body like we do. I'm going to see to it that he is falsely accused and put on trial and convicted, and then spat upon and ridiculed, and then to see that he suffers the death of a common criminal on a cross outside the city walls." He walked off the stage, and the house lights go down, and in the dark silence came a voice saying, "God has already served that sentence. God already knows what it is like to be a human in this desperately hard world. He has taken responsibility for creating us the way he did, by coming into our world to live in it just as we have to live in it. And therefore, there is nothing we have to face that is going to catch him by surprise. He knows what it is like to be betrayed. He knows what it is like to suffer. He knows what it is like to lose and to become a person of grief. There is nothing we experience that the God who, for us and for our salvation, came down to be one of us, does not understand. The God who, after Christmas, changed his name, no longer Jehovah, the remote, but Emmanuel, God with us. Jeff Nichols was right. The astonishing thing is that at Christmas, God, because God loved us, would choose to send Jesus here in the first place, knowing where Jesus would end up. God's love is gift love. God so loved the world that he gave Jesus at Christmas. His Christmas gift of sending the very best, God's self in a manger. How silently the wondrous gift was given, knowing. It almost breaks your heart, a love like that.